Well, welcome everyone. Today we are so glad you could join us for this special session on how Sage Fixed Assets integrates with Elite 3E, and more importantly, what that means for your firm's efficiency, accuracy, and peace of mind. This is a follow-up from some really great conversations we had with many of you at Elite Vantage 2025. One of the clear takeaways is that not everyone realized that a direct integration between Sage Fixed Assets and 3E was even available. Here's what you can expect to walk away with today. We'll have a quick recap of the Vantage conversations that inspired this webinar, a quick look at why this integration is such a game changer for legal and accounting teams, how our Sage Expert Services, or SES team, as we like to call them, helps bring all of that life with minimal lift from your side. And then how to get more out of your investment in Sage Fixed Assets. Ed, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. And I am glad to see that you have joined us for this webinar. My name is Ed Williams. I am the sales engineer for the Sage Fixed Asset team. I am also a certified implementation consultant for Sage Fixed Assets. Now, today we have with us from Expert Services, Shirley Fleshman and John Hester. And Shirley, if you could, give us some information on yourself.
Hi, my name is Shirley Fleshman. I've been with Sage Software for 9 years as a senior expert services consultant. I work with Sage Fixed Assets as well as the related utilities and a number of other Sage software products. I'm here today with my colleague, John Hester, to demo the Sage Advanced Asset Import Utility. John?
Hi, I'm John Hester. I've been with Sage for 18 years. Currently, I am a senior expert services consultant. I primarily work with the Sage Fixed Assets project. I previously was a lead with the Sage 50 support, and I primarily manage and customize the advanced apps.
Now, what is driving this webinar today? Myself and Jeff Perot, who is my boss, attended the Vantage Elite Conference in Orlando a few weeks ago. And what we were hearing from customers that were walking up is they either didn't know that 3E and Sage Fixed Assets had the capability of integrating. And also, if they had Elite, their asset management system, they were talking to us about our asset management system. So here today, we are going to show you both of those products, but we're going to focus on the integration and show you how streamlined you can make your operation when it comes to creating your assets from within 3E and moving those into Sage Fixed Assets. 3E by itself, excellent software. Sage Fixed Assets by itself, excellent software. Put those two together and it's a game changer, a really good game changer. And you will see as we go along what your return on investment is going to be when you integrate both of those applications. Now here, I am going to hand this over to Shirley and John from our Sage Expert Services team.
First of all, I would like to welcome you to today's demonstration of the integration of 3E data with Sage Fixed Assets using the Sage Advanced Asset Import Utility. In today's demonstration, we will walk you through how the integration between 3E and Sage Fixed Assets operates. The Sage Advanced Import Utility is designed to read your 3E data source file, perform validation checks, and seamlessly import into Sage Fixed Assets. If you're wondering where does your source file come from, you will work with your IT or 3E consultant to export the data from your 3E application into a source file such as a spreadsheet that will be used with the utility. The utility supports importing assets into multiple fixed asset companies simultaneously. So the source file can have all of your assets for all your companies at one time, and the import tool will import that data all at once. The process begins with fixed assets data being exported from 3E into a structured file format, which we will give you a sample file format for that. We'll set that up for you. Next, the data is processed by the integration utility. During the import process, the utility validates and populates data in Sage fixed assets, such as depreciation methods, estimated lives, property types, as well as other general and book fields. And it can be tailored to organizations' specific business needs. The process can be executed manually, as we will demonstrate today, or can be set to run when triggered by something such as a Windows scheduler. In today's demo, we're going to import a set of new asset purchases from a source file generated by 3E, and each asset will be assigned a class code, GL account, location, and depreciation method based on the class code field in the source file. So John has Sage Fixed Assets open right now. And John, if you go ahead and open one of the companies, we're going to be working with 2 companies today. And as you can see, this company has no assets. So we are going to work on importing assets into this company. So John, let's go ahead and open the Sage Advanced Asset Import Utility. The utility will be installed on the workstation where Sage Fixed Assets client is installed and starts from your Windows programs. When we first open the utility, we come to the App Settings tab. On the App Settings tab, we have 3 things we need to do. First, select a database. This is the database where your Sage Fixed Assets companies are stored. Then we need to select at least one Sage Fixed Asset company. And last, select your source file. So the source file that contains your 3E data. At this point, we have made the 3 selections we need to make in order to proceed to validate and execute the import of our data. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So John, let's go up to execute. I'm sorry, validate. Validate first, John, of course. So this can take a few minutes depending on the size of your file. What you'll see on the left-hand side, it's recording the actions during the processing of your data against the Sage Fixed Assets rule basis. And here we are. So the top right section of the screen, what we're seeing are the results of our validation. We had 100 rows in our source file. What we're seeing is we have 98 successful rows. So of our 100 rows, 98 successfully validated. We're seeing a total of 6 failures, but that's really on 2 rows. 2 rows had 3 failures due to 3 different processing actions. We also see that we have warnings. So warnings are only warnings. They do not stop you from importing the data. A warning could be something such as method not normally used after 1980. So that will not stop us from importing our data. So in the bottom right section, we can see all of the results. We can see the rows that were successful. We can see our warnings. We can see our failures. If you find this a little hard to look at, though, we can open the processing log. So we're going to open a processing log that's actually a validation results report. So we're looking for errors, and we want to find an easy way to look for errors. So in our processing log, this will have all of those rows that you just saw of results. It's going to have all of our successes, all of our warnings, all of our failures. And what we've done is we've simply sorted this and filtered this so that we could see only the failures, and we could see what the reason for the failure is. That's our message right there. We can see the row number. And to the right, we can see all of our raw data from our source file. So this is a very easy way to look at what your failures were, to be able to go back to that source file, to that row number, and make those corrections, and then validate your data again. Now, in today's demonstration, we're going to let these 2 fail, and we're going to go ahead and import those 98 successful rows. So, John, if you'll take us back to, now you notice when we go to execute, we have some options here. And that is because the utility will not only import data, it will also update data, including book fields, as well as record disposals of your assets. But today, we're going to import data, so let's just choose to import. Now, this is going to look just like it did when it was validating your data, but it's going to take a few minutes longer because it's actually importing data this time. So again, on the left, we're actually seeing the recording of the actions during the processing of your data. In a few minutes, we'll see the results again at the top, and we should see the same results. Now, I want to mention something else. We decided to go ahead and import this 98 rows of data that were successful. We could, after we import this data, which in a minute you're going to see this data in Sage Fixed Assets, after we do all that, we could decide, well, now I'm going to go back and fix those 2 rows of data. If we were to go back and fix those 2 rows of data, then we would be able to use that same file, and we would be able to go through this process again, and it would read those 2 rows of data, it would validate them, and it would show that the remaining rows were ignored because they had already been imported. The utility remembers the assets that were imported, which is really a great feature. Okay, so we see our results again at the top, and we see the same results, which I expected to see. We have 98 successful rows. We have those 2 rows that failed, three failures each for 3 different processing actions, total of 6 failures. We could go look at the results, but we would see the same results in our log again, as we saw when we validated. So let's hop over to Sage Fixed Assets, John. And you saw that this company that had no assets, we're going to refresh our view here. And now we see we do have assets, and we have 48 assets. We had 2 companies in our file, 50 assets each. This is the company that the 2 rows failed on. So again, we would be able to go back and make those corrections and use that same file to import just those 2 rows. If we click on any of our assets, John, and we go to the detail, you can see that it has imported general fields as well as all of our book fields. So in one easy step based on your source file, the data that you have in your source file, we can import data in just a matter of a few minutes. Okay, we're going to talk about a few other things. Well, let's go back to utility, John. Let's quickly go over some of these other options that are up on the ribbon. So back in utility, up on the ribbon, what do we have on the file? On the file, we have Save Settings. That saves your app settings. So to the right, back to the App Settings tab, John. When we set our database, our company, our source file, we can choose Save Settings here, and that would save those settings. Now, I want to let you know that if we've already validated and certainly executed that, and when we come back in, those settings will still be here. But if we didn't do that, we just came in here and we stopped after we chose our app settings, we could save them, and the next time we come back into the utility, they will still be there. We also have verbose login. You'll notice there's a check there. That's checked by default. And what that is checked for is it's telling the utility that make sure that it creates logs, such as the processing logs. We just looked at one for the validation, as well as set up and action logs. And then to create the support file, well, in the event that you would need assistance from Sage Expert Services, this creates a zip file containing all of your log files that we would ask you to send us. Now, if we go under View, we have the option to go to our logs folder, which is where our action logs are. Our configuration folder contains configuration tabs that work with the utility in order to process your data. And that's very important. It's something that we're actually going to set up for you. We're going to look at it together in a few minutes, a few of the tabs anyway, but I wanted you to have a little bit of exposure to what runs in the background, what's going on in the background that makes this utility work. Again, we're going to set it up for you, so but we'll look at it in just a few minutes. And then the settings file, that contains your app settings, your 3 choices on the right, as well as the path to the logs folder. We already looked at validate and execute. If we were to click help, it's going to open where we can view and download the Sage Advanced Import Utility User's Guide. And this User's Guide will take you through all of the steps you need to take within the utility, as well as steps to take in the configuration file, which again, we're going to set that one up for you. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the advanced features of Sage Advanced Asset Import Utility before we take a closer look at how some of these advanced features are set in the configuration file. Some of the advanced features are we can import, update, and dispose in multiple companies from one single source file. We can update data to the book field, update. So we've got data already there. We've already entered the assets at a prior time. We want to go change depreciation methods for 10,000 assets. We can do that. We can more efficiently record the disposal of assets. We can use SQL statements to transform data, as well as SQL joins to import data from other databases. We can use a trigger field to set default values for both general and book fields. And we can create a table to query external data. So if you have data that's not in your 3E system, it's not in Sage Fixed Assets, but it's maybe some data you keep in an Excel spreadsheet, we can actually create a table to query that data. So John has opened the configuration file. And now I repeat myself through this. We will configure this file for you. We will set this file up for you, okay? But I want you to see it because we'll have a kickoff meeting, we'll have a meeting, we'll learn what your company needs, and we will configure all of this for you in this file. We'll do it all for you, okay? And we'll also have a source file that we're going to provide you. And that source file is going to match the fields we see in this first tab, your fields tab. The reason I want you to see this is because we will set this up for you initially, but in the future, let's say that you have 2 additional fields, 1, 2, however many additional fields of data that you decide you want to import into Sage Fixed Assets. Well, if that happens, then you would want to know how to add that field to the Your Fields tab, to add that field to the source file. John, can you pull up a blank sample source file real quick? So this is an example of the source file we will provide you. So all of these fields are the fields that you're seeing in the Your Fields tab. Okay, so go back to your to the configuration file, John. And the next tab after Your Fields is the Field Map tab. And the Field Map tab is where it's taking your fields, which are coming from your source file, and it's mapping them to the fields in Sage Fixed Assets table. So if, for instance, our source file has custom field 1, we're mapping that to Sage Fixed Assets user field 1, because that's what it's called in the table in Sage Fixed Assets. There is a drop down if you needed to add a couple fields to this. So if you added a couple fields to your source file because there's new data you want to import from your 3E system, you would add those 2 fields as columns to your source file. You would add those 2 fields as rows to your fields tab here, and then you would add those 2 fields to your field map and say which field in Sage Fixed Assets does it map to. Not that difficult, right? Okay, we're going to talk about some of the other tabs here that work with app settings. So if we go to the company map tab, we can use this. If we were talking to you about your data from 3E, maybe you told us that, well, I can't export my Sage Fixed Assets company name. All I can export is a company ID, and that company ID is 1. So we would set this tab up for you to say, okay, when you see the company, in the company column in your source file, when you see 1, then map that or import that data to Albany, the company Albany, because Albany is the company in Sage Fixed Assets. So again, this is very useful in the event that you can't actually export the exact Sage Fixed Assets company name from your 3E data. Our class map tab. So we talked about this earlier on. We talked about what we were demoing today. So what we're doing here is we're using, in our source file, we have a column called class. And we're saying when you look at that column class and you see the data BE, then I want you to assign to these assets the class code BE, and I want you to assign the property type P. I want you to assign these GL accounts, this location, and this life, and these depreciation methods. So this is a way to, instead of having all these columns, you can have more columns of data you want to assign to here, okay? Instead of having all these columns in your source file, let's say that you have a source file and it's got 10,000 assets, and then they're all going to get the same property type, but they're all going to get the same class code, they're all going to get the same GL accounts, etc. This is a way to assign that information just based on the data in your class code column in your source file. Then again, we'll set this up for you. The action map tab. So the actions would be, we're going to import, right? We're going to import, we're going to dispose, we're going to update data. Well, if your source file doesn't have the word import or dispose or update, in this case, they were talking about imports, and maybe it has just a letter A, then this is saying, well, when you see the letter A, I want you to import this asset. So another example would be maybe you have if you were later using this tool, let's say to update data or dispose of data, actually, you may have the word retired in that column for your action. And this is telling the utility, well, when you see retired in the action column, I want you to dispose of this asset. Again, this is something we would set up for you after meeting with you to find out your company's specific needs. The last tab I want to look at is the account map tab. So I spoke about this earlier in some of the advanced features. In the account map tab, this is an example here. If we wanted to add data to query and validate against, and the data was not in Sage Fixed Assets, it's not in our 3E data, maybe it's data we're keeping in an Excel spreadsheet, we could actually put this data on this tab for you, and then you would be able to, or the tool would be able to actually use this data. It creates a table. So it actually creates a table in the import database, which is used by the advanced utility. And so that is a very, very advanced feature, as it allows you to actually bring in data that's not in either system. This concludes our demo of the Sage Advanced Import Utility. We'd like to thank you for attending this portion of the webinar today. And for additional information, questions, or to discuss specific company requirements, please contact your Sage account manager to request a meeting with one of our Sage Expert Services consultants.
Let's talk about increasing your ROI, that is your return on investment. Now, we know we're going to spend a lot of money, right? And as we spend money, you know, what is our return on investment? What is this going to do to help the organization? Well, with the Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation module, right, then it is going to make sure that you are always in compliance with the IRS, because we have over 300,000 IRS rules and regulations built into the application out of the box. So in your fixed assets depreciation, you can feel comfortable that if you have to go through an audit, you don't have to worry about your asset management system, okay? Now, when it comes to your construction in progress, if you have projects that you're actually spending money on items and you aren't ready for them to become a fixed asset, you can track that level of information in our construction in progress module, which we call planning. The asset tracking, confidence, it's going to help you find assets that you didn't know that you had and identify assets that may have been disposed of but are still sitting on your asset ledger, okay? And reporting. So many options when it comes to reporting. We have over 28 standard reports built into the application. Also, there are an additional 10 different tax reports that are built into the application. Now, we introduced Ally. Ally is exactly what it is. It is your ally. So if you have any questions about processes that you may not know how to do in your asset management system, if you want to know what certain items are in your asset management system, Ally will be able to answer those questions. If you are not satisfied with the question that Ally gives you, then there's still an option for you to go and click on to talk to a human. That will take you to the support personnel for the Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation applications, okay?
If you want to contact your account manager and request a meeting with the SES consultant, please do. And then a reminder that there is a vast amount of knowledge in our Sage Community Hub where you can talk peer-to-peer or with Sage experts, either from Sage or our partners. And then also you can learn on your own time to manage your fixed assets with confidence, regardless of whether you're just starting out with them or you've been using them forever. On Sage University, there's everything from free training to personalized training. So thank you for your time today, and we hope this was helpful. And thank you to all of our presenters today. Have a great day.